smart solutions. Add-on desires.
Hello viewers, welcome to our daily news analysis session. I'm Lokesh Penugonda. Our first article of today's discussion is the article which is talking about a case for revamped and a need-based public distribution system. In the economic survey which is released this year, it has said that the issue of food subsidy is becoming an unmanageably large. So we'll look into the public distribution system and various subsidy burden the government is facing now. So look into the statistics. So this article is talking about the food subsidy bill between 2016 and to 2019 and 20. So during this period, the food subsidy bill is between 1.65 lakh to 2.2 lakh crore if the loans taken by the Food Corporation of India are included. So let's say the government in 2017 and 18 has provided a Food Corporation of India 1 lakh crore for procurement of various commodities under the MSP and delivery of these commodities to the states at a price. But what happens is, if the amount given by the government is not enough, the Food Corporation of India will take loans, and these loans have to be repaid back by the government in future. So if we add the loans taken by the Food Corporation of India and the amount of money which are given in the budget, this amount will be 1.65 lakh to 2.2 lakh crore per year on average between this time period. Also, what we've seen now is in 2022, in this year's budget, they revised the 2021, that is 2020 and 2021 budget estimates. So in the 2020 and 2021 budget estimates, Food Corporation of India has given a budget estimation for 1.15 lakh crore. This is mainly for food subsidy. But what happened now is, this amount has been revised to nearly 4.23 lakh crore. So why is there a huge increase between the budgeted estimate and the revised estimate? This is mainly because of COVID. Last year in 2020, what we witnessed is a COVID pandemic. This COVID pandemic has led to loss of livelihood and loss of lives. So what the government did was, it provided free food, free rations to many migrants and to many people who are living the below poverty line. Because of including the free food distributed during the COVID-19 and also the loans taken by the Food Corporation of India. As we discussed earlier, Food Corporation of India is taking loans regularly, and the loans which are taken by the Food Corporation of India are included in the revised estimates of 2020 and 2021. Due to adding of the loans taken by the Food Corporation of India and the free food distribution provided by the government during the COVID, the revised estimates has been increased to 4.23 lakh crore, which is a huge issue because in the last year we've seen revenue losses to the government due to COVID-19 induced lockdown. Also in 2021 and 2022, in this financial year, what we've seen is the budget providing 2.43 lakh crore to as food subsidy, and in the future the food subsidy bill will be increased to 2.5 lakh crore. So as you can see, the amount of money the government is spending for food subsidy has been increasing from the last decade. So let's look into the reasons why there is increase in food subsidy bill. First, National Food Security Act 2013. So we'll see the important provisions of this act and why this act led to the increase in the food subsidy burden on the government. This act provided for subsidized food under targeted public distribution system to nearly 67% of the Indian population. 67% of the Indian population will be provided subsidized food grains under the targeted public distribution system. And this 67% will be provided 5 kg of rice per person, that is 5 kg of any food grains. It may be rice or wheat. So this rice or wheat is provided for person, that is 5 kgs per person per month, and this is issued at a very nominal price. So let's say for rice it is 3 rupees, for wheat it is 2 rupees per kilo. So what happens is the government will ask various departments, that is, let's say it will ask the Food Corporation of India to buy food commodities from the farmers at MSP. So let's see in detail. Food Corporation of India will buy 1 kg of rice from a farmer at 45 rupees, and the same rice will be given to the states at a price called as central issue price. So the central issue price will be basically 3 rupees or somewhat. In case of rice it is 3 rupees. So what happens is the Food Corporation of India will buy 1 kilo of rice at 45 rupees and it will sell the same rice to the states at 3 rupees per kilo. So the amount of rupees 42 rupees per kilo, this amount is being burdened. This amount will be paid by the Food Corporation of India, that is the government, and this amount will be the subsidy. This amount will be the subsidy burden that have to be paid by the government. So in the same context, it will buy rice, it will buy wheat at, let's say, 50 rupees, and it will sell wheat to states at 2 rupees per kilo. Thus there is a gap of 48 rupees, and this 48 rupees will be borne by the Food Corporation of India or the Government of India directly. So as the National Food Security Act increased the beneficiaries, it increased the amount of food grains that needs to be provided to the beneficiaries. The food subsidy is increased. So this is one reason. Next, low central issue price. Regarding central issue price, I have just discussed now. So we've seen that 45 kg per kilo of rice is being sold to states at 3 rupees per kilo in case of rice. So this 3 rupees per kilo is very less. If the government is selling this rice at rupees, let's say 10 rupees per kilo, then the subsidy burden on the government will be comparatively less. Let's say if it's buying at 45 rupees and if it's selling at 10 rupees per kilo, its subsidy burden will be 35 rupees per kilo. But now the government is selling at 3 rupees per kilo, its subsidy burden will be increased. So very low central issue price is also a reason for increase in food subsidy. Next, no increase in central issue price. So what happens is the prices of 3 rupees per kilo to rice and 2 rupees per kg to wheat, this price of the central government has been constant since 2013. So even though the National Food Security Act provided for a provision which says for every 3 years you can increase the prices of the commodities. So let's say after 2013 normally the government has to increase this price in 2016 and later in 2018. But what happened is, in the last 8 years, there was no increase in the central issue price. So automatically the burden on the government will increase. Next, state issue price is low. This is leading to burden on the states and not to the center. Only these three are leading to the high food subsidy burden on the center. So what is state issue price? In the above discussion, we've said that Food Corporation of India buys a commodity, let's say rice, at 45 rupees, and it sells the rice to states at 3 rupees per kilo. What the states do is, they will further subsidize this. That is, let's say they are getting rice at 3 rupees per kilo from the center. What they would do is, they will further subsidize it. That is, the state governments will pay 1 rupee or 2 rupees of it and will offer rice at 1 rupee per kilo, or in fact free rice for the targeted beneficiaries. This is true in case of West Bengal, Karnataka. In these two states, for people belonging under Antyodaya Anna Yojana or priority households, these are the categories of people who are more poor, that is, who have lesser amount of money than the persons generally categorized as below poverty line. So for these people, government provides food at zero cost. That is, let's say a person included under the Antyodaya Anna Yojana category is getting 5 kgs of rice per month. West Bengal state, what it will do is, it will ask the beneficiary to directly go to the public distribution center and take this rice at free of cost, and the state will provide the 3 rupees as subsidy. So there is subsidy burden not only on the center but also on the state. Why no price revisions? As we've said earlier, though the National Food Security Act has a provision which provides for a rule of revision for every 3 years, there has been no increase in the prices of the food commodities that are being issued to the subsidy beneficiaries. The main reason being electoral promises and political compulsions. So what happens is, let's take an example of Tamil Nadu. For Tamil Nadu, elections are coming up in this year. So what the political parties will do is, let's say political party A and political party B will be fighting in the election. Political party A will say that if we come to power, if you elect us, we will provide rice at 0 rupees. That is, whatever the amount you have to pay to collect the rice under the TPDS, will provide it for free. And the second party will say, will provide more rice or more commodities under the public distribution system. So these are electoral promises. And also, let's say already the food is provided at very cheaper price and elections are coming up. So the political party in power, what it will do is, it will not increase the price of this commodity, because it feels that if the price is increased now, it may get lesser votes. So these are the reasons for not changing the prices of the commodities given under public distribution system. So what is needed to reduce the burden on the center? So what happened was, in 2014, a committee was set up under Mr. Rangarajan. This committee was to report on the poverty. So this committee has said that only 29.4% of people living in India are below poverty line. That is, only 29% people living in India are categorized as poor. But what happens in TPDS is it is providing subsidized food for nearly 67%. So the people who are receiving this might not be totally poor. So what we can do is we can reduce the amount of beneficiaries, we can reduce the number of beneficiaries who are getting these benefits. Next, also in the last decade or two, what we witnessed is huge economic gains in the country. We've seen our GDP increasing, we've seen many startups coming up, we've seen many companies starting and providing jobs. So because of all this, there is huge poverty reduction and huge economic gains. So even if lesser number of people are provided with subsidized food, or if the quantity of the food that is being provided under subsidy is reduced, even in this case it will not be a huge burden on the common public. So this article also provided for various suggestions to reduce the burden on the center for food subsidy. First, it asks the center to relook the pricing mechanism. That is, it asks the center to increase the prices of the food grains it is giving to the beneficiaries. Next, it is asking the government to follow the official committee recommendations. So what happened was in 2015, government set up a committee to look into the public distribution system, and this committee has recommended to reduce the beneficiaries. Next, it recommended that one of the suggestion is provide give up option, that is provide an option to the beneficiaries to give it up, that is not to continue under this targeted public distribution system network or the scheme. So what happens is in the LPG cylinder scheme, which the government provides heavy subsidies for, they introduce a similar option, and people who feel that they have enough have opted for this give up option. So the amount of subsidy that the government has to pay is decreased. So the article is providing a suggestion that even for TPDS you can provide and give up option. Also, it recommends that states may be asked to tighten the norms while identifying priority households. Priority households are the households which have lesser income comparatively to those living under the below poverty line. As the states identify persons under various schemes, that is under Antyodaya Yojana, under priority households, or even under general public distribution system that is targeted. In all these cases, the states are identifying the beneficiary. So what the center can do is, it can ask the states to tighten the norms and to select only those who actually need it. So by tightening these norms, the amount of subsidy that have to be paid by the center will reduce. Next, introduce slab rates. What we see is flat rates, that is 3 kg per kilo, 3 rupees per kilo for rice, 2 rupees per kilo for wheat. So this price is common for everyone, irrespective of whether they are normally poor or very poor. What this article is suggesting is that rather than having flat rates, introduce slab rates. That is, let's say a person is getting an income of less than 1 lakh per year, then he can be given the option of buying this rice at 3 rupees per kilo, if a person or a household is getting less than 50,000 per year, then he would be provided subsidy and he would be given rice for 2 rupees. That is more subsidy to this person who is earning less. So by having slab rates, the subsidy burden on the government will reduce. These are the various suggestions provided in the article. Next, we'll look into the diagnosing gestational diabetes. This article is talking about gestational diabetes. So why this article is in the paper? Because March 10th, that is yesterday, marks the National Gestational Diabetes Awareness Day. So in this article, we'll see what is diabetes, what is gestational diabetes, and how it affects the common person, and how it affects the government, and what are the various suggestions this article has provided to reduce the gestational diabetes in India. So first, we'll see diabetes. Diabetes mellitus is commonly known as diabetes. It is a metabolic disease that causes high blood sugar. So what happens is, once you eat something, it will go to the digestive system and it become, that is, the carbohydrates you eat will become glucose, and this glucose will be transported by blood to all parts of the body. So what happens is, if the insulin that is produced by the pancreas is low in the body, the glucose that is present in the blood will not be absorbed. If the glucose in the blood is not absorbed due to low insulin, then the amount of glucose in the blood will be high. This is called high sugar in the blood. So let's look into the definition. Diabetes mellitus, commonly known as diabetes, is a metabolic disease that causes high blood sugar. The hormone insulin moves sugar from blood into cells that can be stored or used for energy. In patients who are suffering from diabetes, the body of these patients either does not make enough insulin or can't effectively use insulin. So if it is not making enough insulin, then that is called as type 1 diabetes. And if it is not using the insulin which is produced by the pancreas, then it is called as type 2 diabetes. So these two are the different types of diabetes. So what happens is, in India, nearly 7 crore people are diabetic, and also 3.5 crore people are pre-diabetic. Pre-diabetic is a condition where the blood sugar of the person is higher than common man, but it is not as much high as a patient who is suffering from diabetes. That is, pre-diabetic is a condition with a blood sugar having more than common person's blood sugar, but less than a patient who is suffering from diabetes. So this is a condition which lies in between these two. Also, half of this diabetic condition goes undiagnosed due to poverty, due to lack of awareness. People does not get diagnosed and does not know first that they are suffering from diabetes, and later on when they go and get checkup done, it will be too late for them to do anything. Then it will be difficult for them to manage their health condition. So this article is talking about the consequences and gestational diabetes in particular. So what will be the consequences? If there is huge diabetic problem, then it will have a huge burden on the health setup of a country. health setup or the health system of the country will be facing huge burden. Next, it will reduce the productivity of the person. Also, it will have a negative impact on the individual and also the family members because of the mental problems they would face if they come to know that there is a person in the family suffering from diabetes. So these are the consequences. Pregnancy is a diabetogenic stress. And what is gestational diabetes? Gestational diabetes is when the pregnant woman has high blood sugar during the pregnancy. So how it affects and whom it affects? South Asian women and particularly Indian women has the highest risk of having this gestational diabetes. International Diabetic Foundation has said that 25% women all over the world suffers from gestational diabetes during their pregnancies. In India, per year, we have 2.7 to 3 crore pregnancies every year. So what happens is, even if the risk is 25%, even if we consider the risk being lowered to 10%, then 10% of nearly 2.7 to 3 crore pregnancies every year will be amounting to 27 lakh to 30 lakh. So what happens is, once these women give childbirth and within 10 years, 50% of the women who had suffered from gestational diabetes during their pregnancy, they have a chance of getting diabetes. That is, 50% of women with gestational diabetes will get diabetes if they don't take any preventive steps. So what will happen if a woman is getting gestational diabetes and how it will affect her health and the unborn child's health? First, it complicates pregnancy. A woman who is suffering from gestational diabetes will suffer from complicated pregnancy. There will be fits, there will be stillbirths, there will be premature births. Also, there will be increase in neonatal deaths. Neonatal deaths is a term used to describe the death of a child who is less than 28 days old. Also, women with gestational diabetes will give birth to children with injuries, and also, as discussed earlier, 50% of women with gestational diabetes have a risk of getting diabetes in future. Also, the children born to this woman who's suffering from gestational diabetes have high risk of becoming obese, getting diabetes, and getting cardiovascular diseases in future. So, to resolve all these issues, we need to solve the problem of gestational diabetes. By solving gestational diabetes, we are actually getting 3 positive impacts. So what are these impacts? First, it will reduce the maternal and child mortality and morbidity. So what happens is, let's say a woman during pregnancy gets a test done, and if she finds out that she is gestational diabetic and if she takes proper care, so in this condition, the maternal and child mortality and morbidity will reduce. So what is mortality? Mortality refers to death. Morbidity refers to disease. So as the gestational diabetes reduces, the mortality and morbidity of the woman and the children also reduces. Next, it reduces the risk of future diabetes, because we've seen earlier that women with gestational diabetes give birth to children who have high risk of getting diabetes in future. So by preventing gestational diabetes in pregnant women, we prevent future diabetic children also. So this reduces future diabetes, cardiovascular diseases to women and the children. Also, it breaks transgeneration transmission, because we see diabetic mother giving rise to child, and this child getting diabetes in future. So by resolving and by solving the problem during the pregnancy itself, we will break the chain of transgeneration transmission of diabetes. But there exist challenges to solve this issue. So what are the challenges? First, low capacity of testing of the government infrastructure that is present in the villages and urban areas, and also low awareness. Due to low awareness, many women does not know that there is a problem, that there is a disease, or let's say event of gestational diabetes. So by increasing the awareness, by increasing the capacity of the testing, we can solve this issue to a particular extent. Next, we'll come to the article which is discussing the Indo-Pak and Indo-China relations recently when it's come to the border. So in this article, Mr. Ram Madhav is stating that the government's proactive approach, proactive diplomacy is getting results. He gives the example of DGMOs signing an agreement. So what is this DGMOs? Director General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. They've signed a ceasefire agreement last month. So this article is saying that due to the proactive diplomacy of the current government, we were able to get this ceasefire declaration done. Also, it gives one more example with the line of control with China. So this article is saying that due to this proactive diplomacy, we are able to get the disengagement done at the Pangong Tso Lake, and we are ongoing talks with China to disengage at the Depsang Plains and the hot springs also. So what is this proactive diplomacy and how it helped India? So earlier there were only focus on diplomacy, and now there is active engagement at the ground level and also negotiations at the leadership level. So having simultaneous engagement at the ground level and negotiations at the leadership level is being described as proactive diplomacy. And this article is stating that due to this diplomacy, we are able to remove Chinese military from both Doklam and Ladakh at various points, though it took some time to the removal. Next, this article is saying that during the 1962 war, before the 1962 war, Mao Zedong asked the Chinese commanders to attack India, and what happened was Zhou Enlai, who was the premier of the China, has said that we have a Panchsheel agreement with India, which mandates for peaceful coexistence. Then Mao Zedong replied to it, stating that we will have a policy of armed coexistence. So this article is mainly talking about how we can be proactive and how we can achieve the results which we could not achieve in the last few decades. And in the Pakistani side, we see that after the Jammu and Kashmir reorganization in the 2019, the Pakistan government has said that there will be no more talks till the Indian government returns to the status quo, that is till Indian government gives back the statehood and bring back the Article 370 which the Jammu and Kashmir had. Till then there would be no talks, but what happened now is we see active engagement at both in military level and diplomatic level, and also we see that though there exists a ceasefire agreement, we have not decreased any counter-terror operations. So this will be helpful because it reduces the casualties at line of control, and by not reducing the counter-terrorist operations, we will be reducing terrorist infiltration, so this is what the article is talking about mainly. For more information regarding the ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan, visit our March 1st news analysis session in the YouTube. Next, we'll be discussing the prelims questions of the day. Consider the following statements. BIMSTEC currently has 8 member countries, including India, Nepal. Next, headquarters of BIMSTEC is at Dhaka, that is in Bangladesh. Which of the above statements given are correct? Only one, both 1 and 2, none of them are correct, only 2. The answer to this question is D, because BIMSTEC has currently 7 members, not 8. This is true because the headquarters is at Dhaka. We'll see more about BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC is short of Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral, Technical and Economic Cooperation. This BIMSTEC is an organization of 7 countries. 5 countries of South Asia, 2 countries of Southeast Asia. So what are the countries? Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka. These are the countries from South Asia. Myanmar and Thailand are from Southeast Asia. Nepal is also from South Asia. So 5 countries from South Asia and 2 countries from Southeast Asia. BIMSTEC as a whole has 1.5 billion people and it has a GDP of 3.5 trillion. The leadership is rotated in alphabetical order of the countries' names and the permanent secretariat is at Dhaka, Bangladesh. Second question, consider the following statements regarding UN Security Council. First, apart from 5 permanent members, it has 5 non-permanent members. Second, India, which became a non-permanent member recently, has to vacate its seat on 31st December 2025 when its term gets ended. Which of the above statements given are correct? The question is asking for correct statements and the answer is C, because UN Security Council has 5 permanent and 10 non-permanent members. India, which became a non-permanent member for the 8th time in 2021, will have its tenure ended on 31st December 2022, that is for 2-year term. So let's see more about UNSC. India, for the 8th time, got elected into UNSC as non-permanent member for a 2-year tenure. So these are the other countries which are non-permanent members apart from India. Next, consider the following statements regarding the National Food Security Act of 2013. First, the Act provides for coverage of up to 75% of rural population and up to 50% of urban population for receiving subsidized food grains under the targeted public distribution system. Next, the Act also has a special focus on the nutritional support to women and children besides meal to the pregnant woman and lactating mothers during pregnancy and 6 months after the childbirth. Such women are also entitled to get an amount of not less than rupees 6,000. Which of the above statements are correct? So, option B is correct because these two are correct statements. So, these are the key features of the National Food Security Act 2013. So, we see that it covers up to 75% of rural population and 50% of urban population, and eligible persons will receive 5 kgs of food grains per person per month at a subsidized prices of 3 rupees for rice, 2 rupees for wheat and 1 rupee per kilo for coarse grains. And the poorest of the households which will be under the Antyodaya Anna Yojana, they will get 35 kgs of rice food grains per household per month. These two we've seen. Consider the following statements: Iran, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, China. Which of the below countries shares border with Afghanistan? All except 4th are correct. Only 1 and 3 are correct. All the above are correct. All except option 2 is correct. The option is C. All the above are correct. So let's look into the map of Afghanistan. Here we see Afghanistan's capital Kabul and Afghanistan sharing its borders with Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, Pakistan, and small border with India and China. So this is a previous year's prelims question. Consider the following statements. Purchasing power parity exchange rates are calculated by comparing the prices of the same basket of goods and services in different countries. In terms of PPP dollars, India is the 6th largest economy in the world. Consider which of the following above statements are correct. The correct statement is A, because India in PPP terms is the 3rd largest and not the 6th largest. So this is the end of the session. Thank you.
Add-on solutions. Add-on desires.